That's right. Yeah, what's interesting to me is that I've not met a single person who is a successful entrepreneur or somebody who's really done something big with their life who's not had a history of some sort of trauma or loss earlier in life. That seems to be a universal feature, trait, exposure, experience, whatever you want to call it, that initially I think we view as negative and hurtful when it happens. But when people can work through that and they come out the other side, it provides such a different perspective for life and for how to approach life, in my opinion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we're streaming on the Bold Brave TV network. The purpose of the show is to help you realize that you are not alone and that you are in control of your life. It doesn't matter where you came from or what your circumstances are. We've all experienced pain, suffering, hurt, abandonment, loneliness, and hopelessness. This show is here to help you turn those dark moments around and create a whole new you. Despite your success, have you felt lonely, angry, frustrated, or even suicidal? Do you long to be supported, recognized, and respected for who you are and not just the awards and accolades on your walls? You don't want to be known, identified, and remembered in a way that feels fraudulent because you achieved things out of obligation and not passion. Do you find yourself sitting quietly at lunch, listening to what lights you up, only to feel shame, fear, frustration, and resentment? Your inner turmoil and limiting beliefs surface, making you feel not good enough and afraid of doing something different. You've read the books, attended the seminars, and practiced new concepts and principles, and yet you still find yourself in the same rut. The lies you tell yourself perpetuate a cycle of disappointment. You say you'll change, but your self-limiting beliefs keep running the show, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. As a certified coach, I empower you to become your authentic self. My Soul Journey program aligns you with your true self and guides you to find your soul vision, helping you discover your purpose in life. I provide tools to step into your true magnificence and remember who you are. If you're interested in learning more, contact me at bravetv at KathleenMFlanagan.com. Each week, I start the show with the sound of the tuning forks, bringing in love, happiness, and balance to set the tone for the show and bring out the best in both myself and my guests. So let's begin. Dr. Ryan Williamson is a certified board neurologist, proud Navy veteran, and the owner and founder of Transcend Health. After commissioning as an officer in the U.S. Navy, he completed his medical training at the Florida State University College of Medicine, neurology residency at Georgetown University Hospital, and ultimately separated from service as a lieutenant commander. After this, Dr. Williamson ultimately dedicated his career to improving brain health and helping individuals expand their longevity. Driven by a passion to make a broader impact, Dr. Williamson founded Transcend Health, a platform that bridges neuroscience with entrepreneurship. He empowers leaders and individuals to optimize their cognitive performance through evidence-based strategies that address brain fog, improve memory, and help them overcome cognitive overload. Dr. Williamson's expertise has gathered significant attention with his insights impacting communities across the globe. He is currently engaged in high-level conversations with influential figures to integrate his knowledge into their communities, curricula, and beyond. Through Transcend Health, Dr. Williamson offers a membership program featuring exclusive educational calls, wellness programs, and a private community forum for members. Welcome, Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm so glad for you to be here too. I think this is going to be a pretty cool show. And I want to start with, what is your journey? What was your journey of becoming an awakening spirit?
There are a lot of places we could start with that. I I really think that it started early, and when I really reflect back on it, I suffered a great deal of loss when I was younger. So in childhood, I mean, I lost a lot of family members I was close with, and that really seemed to turn some gears early that helped me awaken into the need to go help people. And this is, I think, a common path for many who feel chosen or called to go into medicine or healthcare, whether that's nursing, doctoring, any kind of provider. And as I went through that journey, I felt called to serve in the military. So there was another awakening there, I suppose, to want to go serve. And I knew that I was more of a healer than an infantry type, if you will, or warrior type. Maybe it's probably a better way to say that. But I thought, how can I go contribute my skills to that amazing group of men and women? So decided to join the military. So went that route. Had a great time, knew that it wasn't going to be a full career, and got out and then figured out, okay, now that I'm kind of done with my training and all my military service, now what? And then there was really a third awakening, I think, that happened really around the time I was getting out. And I discovered that my relationship with my wife wasn't what it could have been or should have been. And that led us into marriage counseling. And that was really the first time I'd ever seen a therapist on a regular basis. And I quickly discovered that I had all of this past trauma that I had buried and not uncovered. And that led me into, for the first time, understanding what was holding me back, what were my limiting beliefs, and just really allowed me to remove a bunch of glass ceilings, I think, that has allowed me to step more fully into who I am and what I'm doing now. And I'm happy to share that with the world.
Okay, go a little deeper.
Go deeper.
Yeah, you're on the surface. We don't do surface on this show. We go a little deeper.
You certainly warned me. Which part would you like me to go deeper on?
Well, I think everything sounds okay. Let's talk about, like, what were some of the traumas, because those traumas led you to where you are, and then yes, when you come out of the service and you're now realizing you're having marital problems and you're wanting to save your marriage, and what led to that, because I'm sure all of that coincides where you are today.
Absolutely. So the earliest form of traumas that I can remember are losing my grandmother, quite frankly. So sitting on my mother's lap at my grandmother's funeral. That's literally one of my first memories in life. And I mean, I actually write about this in the introduction of my book. It's going to be out in September, which I'm also excited about. But it really was a series of loss. So she was first, and then within a period of another 4 years, her husband passed after a lengthy battle with Parkinson's. And then right after that, my maternal aunt was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She was a medical professor, had a tremendous influence on me. And what started as really just some vague back pain ended up being stage 4 ovarian cancer that ultimately took her life within the year. And so, I mean, I literally sat at the same gravesite 3 times, all before my 11th birthday, which was, again, that was, at the time, that was normal. I mean, for me, I didn't have any comparison to know that, oh, people shouldn't be dying of, maybe, well, I mean, Parkinson's in many ways is preventable. Ovarian cancer, when caught early enough, is treatable. I didn't understand any of that, and the impact that it would have on me to be fearful and anticipate loss and maybe lack of trust with people, because I didn't know if they would be around or be there for me. Before that, my parents divorced when I was 2, so I don't have a memory of mom and dad together, but never had a household with mom and dad together, and knew that I had friends that did, so didn't know how to make sense of that when I was little. Apparently that I buried that and suppressed it for the better part of 30 years before I understood how that was affecting me and how I viewed my parents and those relationships. You want to keep going on childhood, or are we?
No, that's, yeah. I mean, 11 was my traumatic year too, so I understand the 11-year-old process of one thing after another happening. So I get that. That's when my grandmother died too, when I was 11, and everything proceeded from there with my father and mother.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Kathleen.
No, it's okay. It's who I became today, you know?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's what's interesting to me is that I've not met a single person who is a successful entrepreneur or somebody who's really done something big with their life who's not had a history of some sort of trauma or loss earlier in life. That seems to be a universal feature, trait, exposure, experience, whatever you want to call it, that initially I think we view as negative and hurtful when it happens. But when people can work through that and they come out the other side, it provides such a different perspective for life and for how to approach life, in my opinion.
No, I agree with that because that obviously led you into wanting to serve and help, which somewhere along the line you went into the medical profession because of it. Because, you know, Parkinson's and ovarian cancer aren't necessarily neurological diseases or issues, but yet there's a way that you bridged all of that. So if you want to talk a little bit more about whatever that entailed, if there's anything in the service that related to that, but when you came out, what was the triggers that you and your wife were struggling with that you started to realize and go down that rabbit hole?
Yes, and a quick side note: Parkinson's is very much a neurologic condition. It's a
Oh, it
condition.
is.
It is, yeah. It's a condition that
Oh,
affects the brain. It's what's interesting is we don't fully understand where it starts or what exactly causes it. We know the symptoms, we know the clinical syndrome, we know what people's brain cells look like under a microscope, and there's some consistent changes, but there's a lot of debate regarding what actually starts or how it begins. There's even a
okay.
theory that it starts in the gut, for example, which is very interesting because it's considered a brain disease. My grandfather's exposure, for what that's worth, I believe was largely due to a printing press that he owned, because there are a lot of heavy organic solvents and chemicals that he worked with that are notorious for causing Parkinson's, for what that's worth. And there are a handful of environmental risk factors that are very highly correlated with developing that particular condition. And not long after that, I mean, goodness, my uncle by marriage, so this would be my paternal aunt's husband, so not a blood relative, but a relative by marriage, was also diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's. So this is something that kept showing up in my family for one reason or another. I mean, not genetic, I don't think, but so watched him undergo a very lengthy battle over the better part of 20 plus years.
Mm.
Really do the math on that. He passed away in 2020, November of 2020, if memory serves. It was not COVID related. He just was at the end stages of his disease. He had dementia as a result of his Parkinson's. But watching my aunt, who was a former cardiac nurse, navigate that, and as I was even going through my medical training, trying to provide perspective to the both of them as best I could when I was asked, just crippling to watch somebody wither away from a neurodegenerative condition like this when it's someone you love and care about in your family. And then that's a large part of my job, is helping patients navigate these kinds of issues. And I'm sure we'll get there, but that's a big part of what's led me into my work at Transcend Health, is that I'm tired of watching people suffer from preventable disease. And there are so many things we can all do to ensure that we live healthier lives and longer lives. And I want your audience and everybody to know that it's largely within their control. I mean, 70 to 90% of your health outcomes are up to what you do. And a lot of people, I think, aren't fully aware of that and are just lost and don't know what to do. And again, we can come back to that point because I know you want to drill down on a few other things first, but it's an opportunity to share that at least.
No, that's really informative because I know so many people that have Parkinson's or had Parkinson's and died because of it, but I didn't realize it could been from chemicals or anything that's in their environment as they were working. So that was a light bulb moment for me. And we are going to go and take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we will dive a little bit deeper of you coming out of the military and then starting to talk more about what we can do and how our brain works with that as well. Welcome back, everyone, to the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we're streaming on the Bold Brave TV network. And we have Dr. Ryan Williamson in the room with us today. And we are going to talk a little bit more about how he went into the military, saw some things because we had an interesting conversation over the break that I would like him to share. And then we'll get into the thing about his wife.
Yes. So for the majority of my active duty career, actually really my entire active duty career, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is it's a big Marine Corps base on the East Coast, biggest base in the East Coast of the United States. About a third of the United States Marine Corps is stationed there, and we have a naval hospital. So I was a Navy doctor, and the Marines are kind of part of the Navy. The Marines don't like it when we say that, but they're technically part of the Navy. They're a very important part of the Navy. But when I was stationed there, I started getting phone calls from family and friends saying, "Hey, is everything okay at Camp Lejeune?" And I said, "Wait, what do you mean?" And they said there are all these commercials on TV for the drinking water and these cases of Parkinson's and different types of cancers and everything that are coming out. And I said, "Oh, I just assumed those were like on our local Eastern North Carolina news stations. I just thought it was some I don't know, some local thing. Apparently, it was countrywide or nationwide." And the idea is that the VA had done studies where they had linked exposure to drinking water or organophosphates that had run into the drinking water on base during more or less the Vietnam era. I think they expanded it to nearly a 20-year period. This is all, somebody can fact check me on this because I don't know the exact dates from memory, but more or less a 20-year period. And there are clearly high incidences of certain conditions. The big one that I would see as a neurologist was Parkinson's. And I had a handful of retirees that ended up in the area that were clearly stationed there that had clearly developed this condition that didn't have any other known or notable risk factors, or maybe a little younger than I would expect, or had an atypical case or presentation. And it was a very, very sad, debilitating condition to diagnose in my patients that may well have been triggered by this unknown, unclean drinking water that Marines had at the time.
So I'm sure that added to the trauma that you were already dealing with your family, even though it was an unconscious moment because we go into the unconscious part of our mind, but I'm sure that just added and compounded. Because if you came home from that and seeing what you see, because we know that in the military, you guys see things that we civilians don't see and don't know, I'm sure that impacted your life to some degree, because if you came home and realized that you're having marital problems, did you realize that you were the root of that, or did you think it was that you were just growing apart? I mean, what was it that got you to that place to say, "Honey, I love you so much, I'm willing to do therapy"? Because that's not something men usually do.
Correct. So to pivot back to kind of the trauma in the military, I fortunately didn't have any substantial military related trauma. I mean, again, I was a doctor, not a again, an infantryman, excuse me. I technically deployed to New York in the middle of the height of the COVID pandemic, which was very scary. That was traumatic for sure. I mean, we had this invisible virus that was killing people ultimately by the millions, but at that point by the thousands, tens of thousands. No vaccine, no cure. We just showed up on a big white ship trying to help in New York Harbor, and I mean, like, half the people in front of me were dead or dying. I mean, it was a very terrifying moment to be on the front lines of a pandemic, and to be asked to go help, not knowing if, I was like, am I going to get sick? Am I going to get this thing and die? I mean, nobody knew what we were dealing with at that point. Fortunately now, I think I'm pretty low risk, and we now understand more about the virus, but at the time, very scary. But really to explore more of the trauma of the life of a doctor, and certainly any doctor that sees critically ill people in the hospital, hands down, one of the worst things that I'm forced to do is to counsel families and help provide them with prognosis or an understanding of what their family member's facing, especially if there's been a severe neurologic injury. So these are situations like where someone's had an out of hospital cardiac arrest where their heart has stopped, and they've had no blood flow to the brain for an extended period of time, and I have to help kind of figure out what the path forward is, and it's never a good one. It's never happy. So that's really difficult. And so that's been something I've largely compartmentalized for most of my career. But this would have been April. It's actually almost, I guess, 3 years ago to the month. April of 22 was the first time that my wife and I, well, actually, I can't even say that because it was before that we looked into marriage therapy or counseling. April of 22 is when we found the right one. I should say that. So we've been with the same guy for 3 years. So there's that awakening. But we you know, we I guess grew together as a couple. I mean, we met when we were both relatively young, and we definitely had aspects of our relationship that were healthy and good. But we got to a point where once I had orders to North Carolina, for about, I don't know, the better part of 6 months or a year, just my wife was upset all the time. And as a doctor, I naturally, in my egotistical and ignorant male brain, decided I was going to diagnose her with whatever the problem was and say, you need help. It sounds so, I mean, it's embarrassing for me to even say this. That's how ignorant I was
I'm
at the
sure
time.
that went over like a lead balloon.
I think we both just wanted help. So she was, I think she knew, she understood that it was probably me or that it was us and not just her. But I totally dissociated from all of this trauma that I didn't know I had at this point, and genuinely was trying to help fix the problem. I mean, that was, I came at it with good intentions. I just didn't know what the root was. Again, it's funny that you can make it so far in life with a bunch of titles and degrees on a wall and still be so dumb.
Some of the best degrees that I have my master's and PhD in life. That's how I look at it.
That's yes, and I'm still earning mine, I should say. So we finally, I mean, we went through several therapists that were basically cheerleaders. I mean, they said, you guys are like the poster couple for happiness. You're beautiful people. You're a successful doctor. Blah blah blah. And we're like, well, it didn't feel that way. So it took a few to get the right one. And I would encourage any of your audience or listeners, you know, if you are in the process of going through therapy of any kind and you feel like it's not the right fit or you're not making momentum or progress with somebody, go find another one. I mean, there's so many out there. It's just a matter of really getting to somebody who's actually going to help. And for that matter, doctor or any other professional. I mean, really and truly, find the right person that's the right fit for you. So we finally got to the right person, April of 22. And I mean, it took this guy, he was like a hot knife through butter, man. It took him no time at all to say, the problem's not your wife, it's you. And I said, what are you talking about? And he gave me a homework assignment and he said, I want you to write down any adverse event at all. I mean, you may not even think it's anything that's bothered or affected you, but go through from the moment you have memories all the way through adulthood and write them down. And I said, okay, this is going to be a waste of time, but entertained him. And so I did it. And once I could feel that barrier start to crack, I mean, it was like the levee broke, right? And then it all just showed up. And it was, I mean, it started again with the death of my relatives at a young age and understanding the dynamics between my parents and how that affected me, and feeling like I was ignored and abandoned. And I mean, just so much that I never even knew was going on. And I wrote it all down and said, I turned it in and he said, well, there it is. And so then we started to undergo the process of unpacking and reorganizing all that information in my brain. And over a period of probably 6 to 8 months, I mean, that alone was transformational. And it took probably another year after that, so not quite 2 years, to really get me to a point where, I mean, I really was transformed. And not coincidentally, I should say, this is a time where I decided to seek more mentorship in other areas of my life and join other masterminds and be around more high-level thinkers and doers, like people like Amber at Books and Business, who I met through another mastermind that we joined, Lifestyle Investor. So, I mean, it's just, you can literally linearly plot my personal development with the level of success I've had in life. And if there is one golden nugget I could give anybody in your audience, it's that. Your level of personal development, it absolutely tracks with your level of success in life, and in my opinion. And I'm not saying that just from me. I've observed this in countless people. Back to our point about individuals that have undergone or suffered some sort of trauma tend to have this success on the back end once they realize and they get through it. And it takes time and it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but it is absolutely worth going through. And I wish more people fully understood the impact of mental health on how it can limit us. I wish we didn't have the stigma around quote unquote mental health that we've had for so long. I'm sure you could speak to that, and have probably lived through a large degree of that. I mean, even when I try to talk to my family or my parents about it, they whoa, there's all this resistance, and they put up barriers, and they don't know what they're dealing with. And I'm like, man, this is it's a tough pill to crack for a lot of people, because there's so much pain around it. They don't understand how important it is to navigate. Anyway, I can keep going, but I'm rambling a bit.
No, good. What I'd like to know is, when you unpack this and you had the transformation, and I agree with you on, the mentors and coaches and stuff like that. I found that when I was able to trust other people, I started watching major shifts happen in my life, because I was coming out of my shell and not being so afraid that people were coming towards me, and I allowed them in instead of holding them back. So I understand what you said with that, and it doesn't matter that you're this neurologist out here, and you're saying the same thing I say, because my PhD is in life and you have an actual medical degree. And again, for the listeners out there, it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter what your schooling is, we all still feel that. So as a result of your transformation and the things you're doing, how did that move into where you are in what you want to do? Because I want to start going down that road about how you transformed and what you want to do, because you're saying that there's so much to learn about the brain that we don't know, or we're not informed of. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of mistruths, because we discovered that at Books and Business, that we only use 5% of our brain. And you're saying, no, that's not true. And we're like, really? So yeah, there's a lot of myths out there. So I would love to know, like, how that morphed into what you're doing now with mental health, with neurology, how it's impacted and incorporated into your private practice as well.
Yes. So after I left the military and began working on myself, as I said, and seeking all this mentorship, I was doing travel work, but it was work outside the military, because I'd left. When I was active duty, I was working with mostly young, healthy people by definition. And, a Marine would suffer a traumatic brain injury, or they would have these debilitating migraines, or they'd have a peripheral nerve problem, something like that. And I would get them back on the battlefield, healthy, ready to serve. And I really truly enjoyed that. That's literally what got me out of bed every day. I would see retirees as well, hence the Parkinson's cases, but that's really what my main focus was, and was very motivating. When I got out of the military, I started back in civilian medicine, and I was traveling to different parts of the country, but I was seeing mostly acutely sick people in the hospital. So treating acute strokes, treating people that come in with, they've had a diagnosis of dementia, or they've had some cognitive decline and would have to make that diagnosis, or they would need a new level of care, help, management, brain infections or inflammation, all kinds of things like this. And the pattern that I would see almost unequivocally are the end results of years of people living with chronic medical conditions that are largely preventable. And Kathleen, that is heartbreaking and immensely frustrating, because I know, again, that the vast majority of where we end up in life has to do with what we do every day with our lifestyle. And I practice that. I follow the literature and the data on that. So I try to be as evidence-based in my own life as I can. And it took me a long time to figure this out, but finally I said, what do I really want to do? And am I really being effective? And am I really moving the needle with my patients in the hospital? Because I can have somebody come in 10 times for different stroke syndromes, and I can push blood thinners into their IV that helps try to break up clots in their brain or whatever. But at some point, I don't mean this to sound crass at all, but it's kind of a medical joke that you're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, the ship is sinking, right? No matter what you do. So I don't mean to minimize that whatsoever. We're talking about a life here, but what I've come to realize, and what the data show, is that if we start earlier, meaning that we are intentional about our health choices earlier in life, we can largely prevent and avoid a lot of this. And so I thought, well, how can I get that out to more people? And writing a book would probably be the way to do that. So that was the first time I reached out to Amber, and Amber Vilhauer, for those that don't know, which is how Kathleen and I met, and told Amber, hey, I want to write this book. And she said, okay, great. And so these dates are relevant too. I emailed Amber on June 7th of last year with this vision, this plan to do this. And Amber responded on June 11th and said, "Hey, that sounds great. I just wrote this book." She sent me a copy of her book, said I'd be happy to help. And Kathleen, on June 10th, my best friend died unexpectedly.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Total accident. Just out of nowhere. And he was, besides my wife, he was the one person that I loved and trusted more than anybody. And her in Amber's email, not knowing this, she said, "I don't know if you believe in divine timing or not, but I just wrote the book and we'll be happy to help." I'm sitting here going, "You got to be kidding me." I mean, to do all this work and to, finally be coming into my own of understanding who I am and what I can become and what I do, then that happens. And I thought, okay, I mean, this is what I meant to do. I mean, there's I don't need any more signs. I mean, this is clearly where my career is meant to go. And I meant to go help more people, whether it's through the book or through a business of some sort. And that is what we've been working on for the past 10 months and what we've built at Transcend Health. And I'm happy to go through what that looks like, but that was...
I mean, was his death preventable?
It was a total accident. So in that way, yes. Without really going into it, he was training for free diving, and as a technique that free divers often do, they hyperventilate before they go under because you can hold your breath for longer. And I won't ever know this for sure, but my hypothesis is that he probably did some version of that, was relaxed, and his body just ran out of oxygen. And when that happens, you go unconscious. So of all ways to go, I think it was a very peaceful and totally unknown to him that he passed, which is a silver lining if there ever was one, as opposed to any other number of horrific ways that people can face death. So I do find a degree of comfort in that, considering, and preventable in the sense that, okay, yeah, maybe if somebody had been there, but I mean, everybody's death's preventable when you are given enough time and resources, right? So
okay. Well, at least it was something different, and he died doing something he loved. Let's put it that way. That's, you got to find a silver lining in something like that. And it was something that he chose to do. You have to know that he chose to do that. And if this was something that helped push you over a little bit further to really go down the path that you're going to help people understand, because I always believe that we are in control of our health no matter what. And I feel like I'm a walk-in testimony. Very seldom have I had any kind of disease or serious health issues, knock on wood, because I keep my mind right. I watch what I eat. I take care of myself to the best of my ability. Can I do better? Always. Always we can do better. But at least I'm not doing nothing.
Yes.
And that's what I want to go down a little bit more, as far as what can people do to help themselves get back, even if they think they're so far away, because I know our body heals itself if we allow it. And we stop whatever this is up here, because this is so much. What goes on in our brain is what directs the body. And I believe that.
Correct. And I don't want to minimize anybody who has felt like they've done the right thing and had an unexpected diagnosis show up either. I mean, these things do happen.
Yes, they do.
So I don't want to marginalize anybody in that regard. If anyone's listening to this, I don't mean to say that whatsoever, but only mean to encourage people to say that you are largely in control of most of your health outcomes. And I think, to your point, Kathleen, it's progress over perfection. I mean, Lord knows I love sweet desserts, and I mean, Corey and I just celebrated 11 years together yesterday, actually. So we had an anniversary dinner, and I keep telling myself I'm not going to have dessert, and then I do it. So I am as much a work in progress as the next person. I can assure you that.
You're having an anniversary event. You're supposed to celebrate. It's okay. A little bit doesn't hurt.
Well, yes, case in point. But yeah, so what can people do? And that this is essentially the whole second half of my book, and is central to what I teach people or try. And that's looking at an evidence-based approach for the lifestyle that we can all put in place. And I think with so much information out there. There's a lot of noise, and what I mean by noise is there are a lot of experts, as you alluded to earlier, that say things that may not be evidence based, or that don't have studies to back them, and that bothers me, quite frankly, because a lot of people latch onto products and hope and follow a direction and do things that may even be dangerous in some cases, that just don't have any quality or credible science behind them. And I think it also surprises people when I talk about what actually works, because it's pretty darn simple. It's simple but not easy. I mean, clearly, so it's not complex, but it's not easy. So my core four, as I call them, and I touched on this at B&B, I think, were achieving quality sleep, achieving a quality nutrition plan, integrating movement into your day, ideally some types of exercise, and then managing your stress. And there are subcategories and pillars from each one of those, but those are the basic four. And I would say, actually, funny enough, this came up on a podcast I did with somebody previously, but when I was explaining the core four, we were talking about someone else's PTSD, and they said, I know I need to be doing all of these things, but my PTSD kicks in, or I feel limited, or my depression kicks in, or what have you. And I said, I should probably add mental health as the foundation to the pillars, because it really is, as we've talked about, and this idea of awakening that you are sharing with people, I think, is so powerful in that regard. Because without alignment, to use Amber's language, or without a solid foundation in your mental health and knowing where you are in life and overcoming trauma, as we all have trauma in some sort. There's big T trauma, little T trauma, but getting through that and getting on the other side of it allows you to understand how to be more fully yourself, more fully present. And then you realize, oh, if I want to have my own podcast, or go write a book, or go create my own business, or go do more good in the world, whatever is important to you, then these pillars become a vehicle through which you can optimize that and have more of it. And either you are moving closer to your goals, whatever those goals are, and you are taking purposeful, dedicated action to get yourself closer to those goals, or you're distancing yourself from them by doing something else. And we all have priorities in a life to live, but when you really understand the alignment and you have the vision of where you need to go, or where you want to go, these become things you get to do, not have to do. And I think that's a big disconnect that a lot of people have, is they don't fully understand, oh gosh, yeah, this only serves me or allows me to be more of myself, because we're all so busy and we're so stressed. We have our horse blinders on, and I've got to do all these things now. I've got to go eat well, and I've got to go get the kids. But I got to go exercise now. People just don't get that. And when in reality, you're just able to show up more fully as yourself when you get to do them. You have the vision in mind.
So I want to touch on mental health, because I think we all have different interpretations of what mental health is. And I look at, that our youth is committing suicide. Now, yes, there's mental health issues around that, but I also think there's a lot that they don't have the support that they need. They're missing something. There's a lack in their life, because I thought I was crazy, because my father was a little crazy. He was neurotic, and that neuroses came on to me, and I worked through that neuroses. I didn't know this at 18 years old, what was going on. And there's a whole spiritual side to what that was. But I realized that there was something very sick, because when I would look at other people, I would see that they seemed more normal and they had normal families. And I'm like, I didn't have any of that. But I worked through it because I didn't trust anyone. So I trusted spirit. I was always connected to spirit in that way to get the guidance that I needed. But I also know that I was also very depressed and suicidal during that period of time. And it was by the will of God I did not take my life, because I was on that downhill spiral of dying because I didn't want to live. And I think when I look at our youth today, I think there's a lot of that because they're not getting what they need, and social media, I think, is a big distraction, and it's a total illusion. So what I'd like to do is have you talk a little bit more about what you think people can do to help their mental health so they can start going back, because there are steps we can all take that won't be like, oh God, I have to do this now. And oh my God, I have to do this now. Let's just say, okay, what if we just start with this and stay focused? Because I always say, just be present now. And sometimes people don't know what that means. But coming from your perspective as a neurologist, I'm sure you have some other insights that might drive those people that are looking for something more scientific than spiritual. Even though this is a spiritual based show, I still believe in science too, because I like the facts. I like that it's coming together. That's why I like you so much, because we're getting you to come on to the other side.
Yes. Well, as scientifically grounded as I believe I am, I've been more spiritual in the last several years of my life, largely with the passing of Tanner, my best friend. I've just seen things and experienced things that, or maybe even just been aware of things that I previously was not attuned to or looking for. And I mean, you could go any number of ways with that, but in either case, I've got a foot in both camps. Let's say that. But what can people do? So I think a really important biological fact about our brain is that we generate around 70,000 thoughts a day, which is a lot. Even when I think about that and break that down, like that seems like a high number, but that's what the data show. That's quite a few thoughts if we think about it, no pun intended. But 80% of those thoughts are negative, right? And a lot of people don't understand that's how we're wired, and then B, to take that a step further, why are we wired that way? And this has been termed what's called our negativity bias, and this is what we believe is an evolutionary byproduct of keeping us safe. So meaning if your ancestors were trying to find shelter for the night, and they were looking at campsite A or campsite B, and at campsite A there was a silhouette that looked maybe like a lion or something like that, they would go, might be a lion, I'm going over there and I'm staying away, right? Only if the next morning the sun comes up and they realize it was a rock, not a lion. So this was wired to keep us safe. Or maybe this food doesn't smell quite right, I'm not going to eat it, I'm going to just have the berries instead, or just, you could expand on that in a number of ways. So served us well to get us here, because we're all the most successful product of our ancestors and evolution, because we are all in fact here, right? Consider that for a minute. If you want to be thankful for something, you are the most successful product of the history of the world, which is pretty incredible to think about. The fact that we're all standing here and able to Zoom and talk and podcast and do all the fun things. But in our modern society and our current culture, our social evolution has outpaced our biological evolution. And so we have this odd dynamic where we never feel good enough. And we always have this negative tendency to limit ourselves or to assume or think the worst, because we're wired that way. And there's been actually very little time and focus in the literature until relatively recently, with the advent of fields like positive psychology, that have actually looked into this and explored, how do we go not just from being depressed or anxious or whatever to normal, but how do we go from normal to supranormal, or to better than normal, better than average? And there are people that are making some headway on this. So one really, really simple technique, in addition to being aware of just how we're wired, is to build in something like gratitude. And there's if you can live in gratitude, that's not a panacea by any means. And there are a lot of ways we can go with this, Kathleen, but this is just a simple one for everybody. But living in a state of gratitude, being grateful for where you are and what you have is, it's life-changing, to say the least. And something simple that I love people can start with every day is to just write down 3 things you're thankful for and start your day with that. That's a very easy way to start. And if you're really a go-getter, probably one of the more challenging exercises I've undergone, but also one of the most effective. My friend Ryan Pearson, who I met in Lifestyle Investor, actually challenged me to this 2 years ago, and we were accountability partners in this, but he called it the Gratitude Challenge. You write down 25 things you were thankful for, and you do this for 10 days in a row. And that doesn't sound like very long, but you get through, day one maybe takes a minute. You go, okay, I can think of my top 5. And then you go, shoot, I have 20 more. So you write down your next 25 things. But day 2, there got to be 25 new things. And day 2, you're like, there is no way that I can come up with 25 new things that I'm thankful for. But if you stick to it and you have your accountability partner, you'll get through it. And the funniest thing, Kathleen, is after, like day 2 to 5 is like really tough because you're just like racking your brain, like how do I do this? By day 6, day 7, it just flows. You're just like the green leaves on the tree, the beautiful sunshine, the fact that I have 2 legs, I can walk, I can do your brain literally through the process called neuroplasticity, which is how our brain changes. When you give it enough directed focus and attention and effort, it literally rewires the way you think. And it rewires your neural circuits. And now get back to depression and how we're feeling and the negativity bias. You almost bypass it entirely. That's not scientifically correct, but you can overcome it easily and you can reframe how you view the world. And by intentionally practicing gratitude every day, for example, that's one of the, dozens and dozens of ways that you can start to just build the momentum to overcome, I'm feeling stuck or I'm just feeling so down. We can pause and double click there. I can keep going on different stuff. That's a favorite one.
That was how I came back from the dark side of me. When I came on the other side of my transformation and there was nothing left inside of me and I didn't even know how to move forward. I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I think. All I know is that I saw myself and it was like I was reborn, and it's like, and somebody asked me, well, what are you grateful for? I'm back in Colorado. And then the next day it was the sun, it was blue skies. And then within 3 or 4 days, everything started to change so fast for me. So, and now when I see a self-limiting belief come up, it's like I just flip it or, flick it off or whatever, don't give it any energy. But when I was doing that, I felt like my brain was flipping over is what it felt like, like when you talk about how we're rewiring, I could feel that. So I think that's so cool because I say that and people are like, yeah, whatever, you think that's going to do it. And then here you are saying the same exact thing. So there is a science behind that. And I'm going to do that challenge because I know that, because I started that once and years and years ago, and it was like, I don't know what else to do or how much I'm grateful for. And now it's expanded, but I think I'm going to try that because I think that would be fun to really catapult and see where I go with that. But we're getting really close to the end. So I want you to tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you and what some of your offerings might be as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we talk about this and a whole lot more at Transcend Health, which is my business. So our website is transcendhealthgroup.com, and Transcend is TRANSCEND, transcendhealthgroup.com. That's one way you can follow us. Also on social media. So if you look for me, Dr. Ryan Williamson on LinkedIn or Instagram, I think it's Dr. Williamson, or Transcend Health Group as our LinkedIn handle. So any of those, will just Google it and it'll come up. So we have a handful of offerings for people. We've got the book coming out in September, as I mentioned, which I'm very excited about. Love to be able to share that with your community or anybody else. But if people want to get involved between now and September, they're really one of 2 or 3 routes to do that. For people that want more of a group environment, to have more of that collaborative accountability partnership on an ongoing basis, we have our longevity and legacy membership, and we do bi-monthly. So every 2 weeks, Zoom calls like this, where I get to share and educate on a given topic, and then we kind of do a Q&A afterwards. So maybe the topic of the day is how do you feel better? Or how do you practice gratitude? We talk about that, the science behind it, then we just have an open discussion like this. And in the meantime, our members get access to a community portal where they can interact with one another and share stories and wins. So that's level 1. There's a shorter, about a 10-week kind of crash course version of the basics that cover all the pillars and a little bit more that actually parallels the book. So those are all 10-ish Zoom calls with Q&A that people can get involved in. They also get access to the membership while they're in that. We call that our cohort. So that's, again, more personalized time with me, smaller groups for people that want to get kind of up and running a little bit quicker on what to do and all the techniques. And then for people that really want individualized attention, I was very resistant to this for a long time, but I've recently opened private coaching. So I do work one-on-one with people that really feel like they need the extra time and attention, or they've just been looking for answers and they've had all these fragmented workups, labs, imaging, that kind of thing. I try to synthesize all that as best I can and come up with an assessment and what I call a strategic action plan for those people, where I just say, hey, here's what I think is going on. Here's where you've been. Here are the directions I think we need to head with this, and then we work together in that fashion. So those are the big three. If people are still waiting on the book.
Well, thank you so much for all of that, Dr. Ryan. I'm so glad that you came on the show. And for all of you out there, Dr. Ryan and I are talking about him coming on the show quarterly. So that's something else that's we're working through right now. So because I think what he has to offer is really important, because I think science and spirituality are merging together, and this is a beautiful way of doing it. I mean, you just demonstrated that, and you didn't even know that I did that. So that's even cooler. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving your time today, because I know you're a very busy man. And for everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you found any value, please like or subscribe to the show, or give the link to a family member or a friend who might need a little bit more help. And if they're looking for more medical training, then Dr. Ryan is definitely the person you would want to get in touch with. And my books are at Barnes & Noble. Yes! Really, I'm so excited about that. That happened 2 weeks ago. And Amazon and Kathleen M. Flanagan. Check out my website for the list of services that I have. And from my heart to yours, I hope you all have a fabulous week.